Heyo, it's your boy Duck of the Stars, back at it again with another console hardware video. Now I noticed you guys really liked the Xbox Series S and X unboxings, so as promised I hoped that in this new year I could deliver a broader review or a more in-depth review of the two, hopefully providing a comparison as to which console is best for you and which one has been best for me so far. If you guys enjoy this video, I will ask ahead of time if you could like and or subscribe if you're not already. That would be fantastic. It does encourage me a lot to see any kind of activity going on in the channel, even if it's just a comment. I really do get excited. I hope to answer every single comment that comes through on my page. So without further ado, I will get into the specs of these consoles. So I think what I'm going to do first is compare some of the abilities in both Xboxes, so things that each of these can do together. Of course, the first thing is that they can quick resume. Quick resume is one of Microsoft's newest ideas, that it'll basically run things in a minimized window for those of you who are only familiar with PC. So that when you click back on the game, it immediately goes back to the game. You don't have to worry about load times of any kind, or very minimal load times as the game recollects itself. Both of these do it beautifully. I've tested it both willingly and unwillingly. I actually don't know if there's a way to turn off quick resume, but it will automatically put it into quick resume mode if you do not exit out of the game. Another thing they can both do is Raytrace. And that's a big thing coming into the newest generation of games. It will make games look a lot better, especially in terms of shaders. If there's one game that I recommend you look into to show the power of ray tracing, I would recommend you look at Minecraft mod that show what ray tracing can do for the digital or for the video quality of the game. Of course, these consoles both have the same I believe they have the same sound processing chips. A lot of the architecture is going to be the same, and it's Xbox's new Velocity architecture. I'm not going to get much into that because I feel like there's going to be a total of 5 people in the world that really can understand Xbox Velocity architecture that don't already work at Microsoft. Gaming on both of these machines can run up to 120 frames per second. So that means that every second your eye is going to process 120 frames, which is absolutely insane, and does make a monumental difference in next gen versus current gen or last gen gaming. And of course, all of these are compatible with Xbox Game Pass, with most Xbox One accessories. Unfortunately for you, you Kinect fans still left out there, I do not believe it is compatible with Kinect at this moment in time. And I believe it is very largely backwards compatible, something Microsoft has been very good with. You can play certain original Xbox games, plenty of 360 games. I believe almost all of the Xbox One. Granted, the ones that don't, or the ones that require Kinect, aren't going to be playable on this machine. Of course, the major differences, of which there are 2 according to Microsoft, come when we get to processing power. Now, the processing power for the Xbox Series S is 4 teraflops. A lot of you aren't going to understand what that means. In fact, vast majority of people don't understand what it means. It's really a lot like the bits of the 1990s, 8, 16, 32, 64 bits. The bigger the number, the better, and of course this still remains true today. The Xbox Series X has a whopping 12 teraflops of processing power. That is more powerful than the PlayStation 5, vastly more powerful than the Xbox Series S, and rivals some of today's higher-end PCs. And that's something that I really want to cover and make sure you guys understand in this video, is that this is one of the best deals you can find, or both of these really are, one of the best deals you can find in the gaming market. For those of you who aren't big PC gamers, gaming PCs can cost thousands of dollars, and of course avid fans of PC will argue that the cost lessens over time, and maybe that is true. I'm not a big PC gamer myself, so I can't attest to that. But for the power of these machines, these are going to rival PCs for a very long time, a very long amount of their lives. Whether we will see a pro version of the Xbox Series is yet to be decided. It was very special last generation to see two pro versions of consoles, being the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X. Both of these were enhanced versions of the consoles, essentially. But you can kind of argue that's the same thing that's going on here. This is, in some regards, better than an Xbox One X. It's certainly going to be a lot faster. It is next-gen gaming as opposed to current-gen or last-gen gaming. Really not sure what to call that yet, honestly. This is by far a definitive example of a next generation gaming machine, and you can tell because of the resolutions both of these can output. Now the Xbox One X, I believe, could upscale to 4K, which means that the native resolution would not be 4K, but it could essentially emulate it, much like the Nintendo Switch does, where the Nintendo Switch itself can only display 720p. The dock will upscale it up to 1080p for you. Now, this thing can run 4K. This thing cannot. I will make that abundantly clear that if you are looking for a 4K gaming experience, this is going to be the only Xbox so far that will run native, or as Microsoft will call it, true 4K. The Xbox Series S can output up to 1440p, which is not bad by any means. I also want to make that clear. Most people who have HD TVs probably do not have a 4K TV at this point. 4K TVs are only just now becoming affordable. So if you have had a TV since 2010 or so, even up to 2015, it probably only outputs 1080p. So keep that in mind when purchasing either of these consoles, that this is a 4K machine, and of course it will run on your 1080p, 720p TV. As long as there's an HDMI port, you will easily get access to either of these consoles. And in fact, it still looks fantastic in 1080p. I've tried it on a 720p TV, a 1080p TV, and a 4K TV, and I guess in both instances these look fantastic. Of course, they are best fit for 1080p and above, but you aren't going to have any trouble running it on a 720p TV. Now, aside from resolution, there is one more thing I have forgotten, and that is storage. Now, the Xbox Series S has 512 gigabytes out of the box. The Xbox Series X has 1 terabyte. Now, that's, of course, right around twice as much as the Series S, not counting the amount of space it takes to take up the OS, which is very much at all. Both of these can be expanded storage-wise, either through Microsoft's own peripheral, which is kind of pricey at the moment. Probably will go down in the coming years, though. Or, I believe, through an external hard drive or SSD, you can also expand your storage that way. Now, this is important because both of these, are next-gen gaming systems. And to those of you who have been playing any kind of current or next-gen game, I say a game like Apex Legends, Fortnite, in more exclusive titles like Microsoft Flight Simulator, Forza, and Halo Infinite, you'll notice that these files are massive. Some of these can be up to 115 gigabytes. So if you think about that, that's 1/5 of this console storage taken up by Fortnite. That's 1/10 of this gaming console storage taken up by Fortnite. So keep that in mind when buying these games, especially because this machine does not have a disk drive. I said there were only 2 that Microsoft listed on their website. I actually lied; it was 3 at the very least. And I completely forgot that, shockingly, is that this has a disk drive. The Xbox Series X. The Xbox Series S is, as of now, all digital. We may see enough backlash in the future that there could be a model with a disk drive, but the entire point of the Xbox Series S is that it is the smallest Xbox ever, And I'll get into size in a moment because it's really interesting for how powerful a machine this is to how small it is. But you cannot play any physical games. This is digital only, so that means you can only buy it off of Microsoft Store, or if you have Game Pass, then you can download these games console. On the contrary, this can play 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, so that's something to keep in mind. It's a hefty price for a disc and a lot more power, but we'll also get into that in a moment. One thing that must also be mentioned is the size of these two consoles. If you may notice, this Xbox Series X right here is gigantic, and this Xbox Series S is very small in comparison. That is because the Xbox Series X is 15.1 centimeters by 30.1 centimeters by another 15.1 centimeters. Of course, it's a square at the top, so this console is absolutely massive. I believe in inches for us Americans out there. That's I believe that's about 1 foot, 16 inches. I don't even know my own country's national national size index. That's a little embarrassing. However, the Xbox Series S in comparison is 6.5 centimeters by 15.1 centimeters. So it is the same on the, I believe we call this the Z-axis, and 27.5 centimeters across. So Microsoft does like to compare this a lot. You look at it height-wise, as you can see, they're not too far off. And I honestly think it looks very nice in comparison to each other. But when you move the Series X on its side, I forgot I had a controller right there, you will notice that there is a staggering difference in the size of the two consoles. I'm going to move these out of the way so I can put these back up safely. And so these are all factors to take into consideration when buying either of these two. And buying is, of course, the biggest deal. You can't really find the Xbox Series X anywhere right now. Microsoft is having a very hard time providing chips for even themselves, let alone the general public. The Xbox Series S is a lot more available because it's a lot cheaper to produce. The parts are a little bit older, as far as I can tell. And if they're not a little bit older, you can correct me in the comments. And if I've said anything wrong, please do. I'll pin your comment so that people know. I may have spread a little misinformation, but I'm trying to read as much as I can off of Microsoft's official website so that it's less, a little bit less of a guess, more of a well-informed video. Now the Xbox Series S retails for $299.99, and the Xbox Series X retails for $499.99. So that's a $200 US dollar gap right there, which of course is a lot of money. This is the same price as a Nintendo Switch. This is $200 more. This is exactly the same price as a PS5. This is $200 less, $100 less than the digital PS5. And so there's a lot to take into account when discussing these two consoles in general. The controllers are the same. I'm going to make sure that's clear. The UI is the same. A lot of things about these consoles are the exact same. I could pair this controller with this consoler with this console. There would be no issues whatsoever. They use the same controller. They use the same UI. They have the same games. There have been, from what I can tell, no problems running specific games on console. I do know that Microsoft Flight Simulator claims it's Xbox Series X only, but I'm not sure if that means it's Series only or if it's exclusive to Series X. I may edit that in if I can find out the actual meaning behind Series X only. And so I'm going to give my own opinion on these two consoles real quick. I think that the design of these consoles are great. I've said that in the Series S video. I've said that in the Series X video. I've gotten criticism for that both times, but I don't care. I do think this is a very nice, sleek, modern design which makes sense coming out of a computer company. You're going to see this, and it looks like a tower. You're going to see this, and it looks like a very computer-esque game console. It definitely does. This definitely looks a lot less like a tower. This does. But the big fan in the middle here, that's what this big black ring is right here, is the cover for a fan. Both of these provide an insight as to what Microsoft is, a company, and that it's a computer company first and foremost. So I am going to defend to tooth and nail that these are well-designed consoles, and they fit the Xbox brand very well. Now, with the Xbox Series S, this may be a personal thing. I have never really liked white consoles for the reason that, as a gamer who does keep his hands clean while actually gaming, I do find it very hard to keep this controller clean. I've had friends I've talked to about this. It's so hard to keep these white controllers clean, especially on the back. Of course, that's an easy fix with a grip. But given that white is the only choice of color right now, it makes it super clear when it gets dirty. Not that I ever would condone smoking, but if you are a smoker, keep in mind that this plastic will turn yellow over time. But that being said, smoking is bad for you. I do not support smoking. And so I think I really enjoy the small design. It's very portable. I could take this in my backpack with me to school. If I were still in high school, I, as a college student, carry a, I believe they're called knapsacks around. Much different set of bags. But as long as you have even like a drawstring bag, you can carry this around with you. Not that you'd be able to play it without a TV, but if you're going to a friend's house often to game with them, this may be a considerably better option than this, because the Xbox Series X is 9.8 pounds. Not sure what that is in ounces. Sorry, guys, for the mismatch of units. Whereas the Xbox Series S is only 4.25 pounds. So this is essentially half as light. That's kind of an issue because the Xbox Series S, for being such a small console, is actually surprisingly heavy. I find it to be decently heavy, to the point where I would pick it up and say, well, that's not what I expected at all. The Xbox Series X is a much different story. I don't think I've had many complaints at all with the Xbox Series X. I think it is the definitive Xbox of this decade, at least for now. I haven't had any issues setting it up. I haven't had any issues working with it. Well, it does have some clock issues, but I think that might be my own issue from plugging the console every time I've had to move around this holiday season. But I can tell you it is a monumental pain in the ass to carry around because of how heavy it is. You lift it up and you feel like if you drop it, it's just going to shatter because of, feels like there's so much packed in there. And there is. That's absolutely true, that there is so much packed. This console's impressive that it's only this big. And so I guess ultimately I would say, in my opinion, that the Series X is the better console to get for any average gamer. Now, I do say gamer because there are different kinds of gamers. I say gamer lightly because there are many different kinds of gamers. If you're a casual gamer, I might recommend the Series S even more. If you're on a budget, I definitely recommend the Series S, especially if you're already planning on using Game Pass to begin with. I'm not a big fan of basically Game Pass, I guess PlayStation Plus, Netflix, Disney Plus, etc. The subscription services where you don't actually own the media. Not a big fan of that, but in this day and age, it's really hard to actually own media. Maybe I'll do a video on that as well at some point. But for the time being, what you need to know is that the Xbox Series S is good for those who aren't serious gamers, those that aren't physical collectors. those that don't mind digital games over physical games, there are always going to be a lot of people that mind physical over digital, which I completely understand, and that's why I have this as well. Um, and so I want to make it very clear that depending on what gamer you think you are, depending on what you're going to use this for, if this is going to be a glorified Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus streaming box, don't know why you'd spend any any money more than a 4K TV since they have those built in, but I would definitely recommend a Series S over that. If you're only looking to play a couple games, as PlayStation or Nintendo is your main console, this is a good justification for playing those few Xbox exclusive titles. If you are going to be playing lots of games, you need especially if you're a competitive gamer, you need the extra processing power. You want the faster load times. I do believe that the Xbox Series X is a little bit faster than the Series S, just because of how powerful it is. The Xbox Series X will be for you. Regardless, I do want to stress as well, do not buy from scalpers. It sucks that I have to say this 2 years, year and a half after the release of the Xbox Series X and S. Do not buy from scalpers. It is not worth it. Most of these games that have come out on Xbox Series X are also on Xbox One. Again, with the exception of maybe Microsoft Flight Simulator, but I don't think I see very many people lining up to buy one of these bad boys for Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I know the temptation is there to buy from a scalper. I bought from not a scalper, but from a reseller. They maybe pay slightly above retail for the Series X. It's still one of the things I regret. I love this Series X. It's been the console I've played on the most this entire year, actually. Despite just getting it a month ago. But it's not really worth it to me. I could have used the Series S. And the only reason I took advantage of the Series X was because I was able to find one for a reasonable price. Keep in mind, reasonable is different for everybody. Some people think it's ludicrous that they would have to pay $500 for this machine. I know hundreds of people I could talk to and say, would you ever buy an Xbox Series X? They say, hell no, it's way too expensive. So this is a very nice, cheap alternative. But take that with a grain of salt because, as I said, it's a cheap alternative to the Xbox Series X. This is, by all means, Microsoft's main console. And what we should be looking forward to when we think of next-gen graphics. I can tell there is already a difference in games like Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon. Forza Horizon 5, I believe, is the newest one. When comparing the two on the console, and I can't do that because I can't output 1440p or 4K on my little Elgato, unfortunately. There are certainly plenty of YouTubers out there that can record that comparison, and you do notice a pretty significant difference. Playing Halo Infinite multiplayer, for example, I noticed how much smoother it is on Xbox Series X, how much more crisp the graphics look. And so it's important to keep those things in mind. Of course, buying any console, but especially with these two because they are such different machines under the same brand, makes it quite confusing. But not that the Xbox Series S will be bad for anyone looking to get into gaming or looking to get into Xbox. Of course, you can always sell this later. These things still sell for retail, if not a little bit less or a little bit more, depending on the condition yours is in. My initial plan was to buy a Series S, wait out the holidays, and hopefully by mid-2022, the chip shortage will be significantly reduced. So I don't know the chances of that happening. Of course, there is going to be a chip shortage, continuing into this year. I do believe even Nintendo is starting to experience shortages. But enough rambling. My final verdict on the Xbox Series X is that these are two amazing consoles. I know Sony ponies will get up in arms about that, and don't worry, I have a PS5 as well, and I will be shortly, whether that be tonight or in a couple days, be releasing a video comparing the Xbox Series X to the PlayStation 5, of which I will say many good things and not so good things about each console. Of course, as a trade-off between the Xbox Series X and the PS5. These two are incredibly, or this generation is going to be incredibly balanced, with one company doing great on one aspect and the other doing not so great on the other. But you can't go wrong buying either of them. And you can't go wrong buying either of these as well. Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S will be relevant for the next couple years. Of course, Xbox Series X will outlast the Series S in terms of power. However, both of these consoles are fantastic purchases if you're looking into getting a next-gen game console. But depending on how eager you are to experience that processing power and that better resolution, depending on how eager you are on seeing those things. Of course, if you have a 4K TV, this Xbox Series X may be the way to go. If you're still using a 720p or 1080p TV and you don't plan on changing that anytime soon, then an Xbox Series S may make a little more sense for you. Of course, we will see how 2022 goes, whether or not Microsoft may announce either a disk drive add-on or a version with a disk drive for the Series S. Of course, we know none of this so far, and I don't think they're really eager to release any of that right now with how tough it is to release the two consoles they have so far. I hope this wasn't too long of a rant. Sure looks like it from the time on OBS right here. I will wrap up right here. Once again, if you enjoy the video, please do like and subscribe. It does mean the world to me as a small YouTuber. It is very hard to find motivation some days. When it's like, oh, I made this video on Halo and it only gets no attention whatsoever. It's of course a project you worked very hard on that essentially goes to waste for the mind of the creator. So doing so would be a large boost of motivation for me. Even just commenting something saying, "Hey, great video," or "Hey, you rant too much." Even constructive criticism is really nice to hear. I won't bore you guys any longer. I hope you guys had a great New Year's. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. I hope maybe I've given you a perspective, and maybe you've now leaned more towards one or the other console. If you have any questions, definitely please ask in the comments below. And other than that, I will see you guys in the next video.